Now, if you've gone through the user experience process and you've figured out who your target demographics are and you established your goals and you've done your market research and you're ready to start designing your content, that really brings us into sketching, wireframing, and prototyping. And this is a couple suggestions here, again, researching out, sketching your ideas, wireframe. We're going to talk a little bit about those. So first up, the thing you should be doing, the easiest thing to do is just to get a pen and paper and just start drawing ideas and trying to gather ways of, helping convert people to the goals that you've established. So to do that, again, you need to look at lots of your research and user personas and what you're doing, but just drawing it out makes it so much easier than those students that go out and they just start coding by hand, not really knowing what this is going to look like. So once you've done your sketches and you're feeling confident about that, you really want to move into some online sketches. And you can see over here on the left-hand side where you can just draw a square with an X through and say, I'm going to have an image here, and I don't know what content's going to go underneath it. You can use some lorem ipsum if you want to. And you just kind of start building it out. And then the next step might be taking and adding shades in. Now, this phase of the design, you should not ever be using any images, any color. For that matter, even a lot of content you should probably be pulling out. Now, in this one, you can see they have like the Acme logo and a small navigation, but everything else is lorem ipsum, which makes it easier to design layout elements. Now, again, we do this because if you have really nice imagery, you often rely on that and your layout kind of stinks. But if you can get your layout looking really good in just shades of gray, black, and white, it's going to look that much better when it gets to color. So in this example, you can see how we've taken now those shades of black and white and we've added that color in and added those images and some of that content. So this is what we call wireframing. Again, we sketch, we wireframe, and then we build kind of the final mock-up of what it's going to be. And then we can prototype and we go through and build it out in code and see what it looks like at that point. Now there's two different kinds of layouts that I wanted to address right now. We have two kinds. One's called box layout and one's called full width layout. And a lot of the assignments, we do a box layout with students to kind of help them understand how things work. And you can visually see the wrapper around right here. It has a little shadow to the edge, and content does not spill out onto the sides. We compare that against a full width layout where the wrapper still does exist. It's over here on the sides, but we have content, these white bars that go out, images that come out on the edges. But we don't bring our content back out on the edges, just kind of supporting background imagery and colors like this gray bar right here. If you look at our example right here, you can tell that this is a full width layout because this bar does kind of extend out on the side, and there's not this box that's been drawn around the website like you see here. Once you kind of figure out the type of layout that you're going to want to go with, you have to figure out how does that going to respond to different browser sizes. In a previous video, we showed all the different kinds of resolutions that might be out there. And it's very difficult to design to all of them and have it work because some are really skinny and thin while others are really wide. So first off, when we design websites, we typically learn to build static websites. And it looks something like this. And when we squish in really far, we get the horizontal bars that come up and we have to scroll back and forth. And that's not the best design for our websites. Then we can also move into a liquid layout. And this is where you take your wrapper and rather than applying 1,000 pixels or something to the wrapper so it's static and it won't resize, we apply a percentage to that. This might be 100% wide with some padding along the edges, as you can kind of see there. A lot of students will build at 80% or things like that. But on this example, you can see it's always going to fill the screen. And so this is really nice. This is a little bit better than a static layout. But if you get on a really big monitor, you get these long lines of text, you know, and things are really spread out. And it might not be exactly how you want it to be. And when you get in really skinny, then you start having problems with menus and content coming outside of it, outside the edges. And so to accommodate that, what we do is we build towards two other types. We have one called adaptive and one called responsive. And you've probably heard of responsive design before, and often adaptive and responsive are grouped into the same. But let's show you what adaptive looks like. Now, adaptive looks a lot like the static layout we just played with a few minutes ago. Or when I resize in, it stays the same. We have a set width from here to there. But adaptive design looks to see how wide the viewport is, and the viewport is this white pixel up here down to this white pixel down here, and says, when I go smaller than that and things can't be visible, I'm going to snap it down and change the width of my wrapper. And we can change again and again and so forth, and then down to where it's all the way wide. Now if you notice, not only is it changing the width, but certain items disappear. Like right here, that blue bar that was on the side got moved down to the bottom. And if we go even tighter, even more, you can see how that menu is brought up top and the green is underneath it. And this is used all over the place. For example, if I go to Engadget, I know that they use an adaptive design. You can see here we have a 3-column layout, and when I come in really close, it moved to a 2-column layout right there. You can see that. And when I go in farther, a 1-column layout with a double column down here. And when I go in even farther, down into a single column. And again, we call that adaptive web design. And it just allows us to accommodate different browsers and their widths and make sure that the best view, no matter what the size is for that device. So adaptive, we're going to move on to responsive. And what I want you to think about is how adaptive looked similar to static. Responsive is very similar to liquid. Okay, so we can resize now, and things are shifting around just like they did with a liquid layout. But similar to adaptive, when we get really in here tight where things start squishing a little bit, then they'll snap down to a new view. Do you see how that blue bar on the side on the right snapped underneath? So it's always taking the full width of the page, kind of like liquid does, but adds that responsiveness in that we saw in adaptive of moving items around and shifting them and making sure that they look the best that they can. And so adaptive and responsive, without question, is how websites should be built. Often students who are young and building their first website, I try to push them more towards an adaptive because it's a little bit easier knowing how large each column will be rather than having things constantly shifting around and moving. But it tends to help them out quite a bit, and their designs tend to be a little bit better because of it.